Hello there and welcome. Today we're just going to be having a look at this tank, which I'm really surprised at how robust this little system is. This tank's only 120 litres, yet it's a long tank. It's 4 foot, believe it or not, or just over 4 foot by 1 foot high and then half a foot deep. And it just does so well. I'm really surprised at how stable this little system is. I'm just going to talk to you about it and what I've done here so that you could hopefully replicate it at home, because this is probably one of the simplest marine tanks you can do. Nothing in here is particularly special or in fact time consuming or expensive. So okay, the tank's a weird shape, but you could replicate this in any tank. And the reason I say that is because it's the internals really that's quite surprising. In the first instance, there isn't really any filtration in terms of what you would typically call filtration. At the back we have a little internal filter, so okay, there is a filter, but this is a really small one, and inside there it's just polywool that I switch out every now and then just to get rid of some particulates, and it's just returned via this spray bar. You can see how, one, overgrown with macroalgae it is, and that's just the way I like it, and two, how gentle the flow is. The only other source of flow is this surface skimmer, which you can see by the amount of dirt in there is doing a great job and also needs changing. And this is All Pond Solutions surface skimmer, and what this does is takes the water from the surface of the aquarium, removes all of the scum and filth that accumulates, and you can see it keeps it nice and crystal. But that's kind of it. The rest of it is the tank itself, and this is what I would say is and should be the aim of all reef keepers, really, in my opinion, is to make the tank as live as possible. If you're doing something where you want to recreate an aquatic environment, it should really be your aim to make that aquatic environment as self-sustaining and stable as possible. Now, I know a lot of people rely on traditional filtration and things like that to keep their reef systems going, which is great. I mean, I suppose it's a bit like, let's say, comparing a fighter jet. So a fighter jet, when it flies, it's basically relying on all of its computer systems to keep it going, and if that computer system fails, it tumbles out of the air because it's not technically able to fly on its own. Whereas something like a glider is aerodynamic. If you put it in the sky, as long as you find those thermals, it can glide forever, pretty much. And that's kind of an example of the two different approaches to reef keeping. So you can have a really high-tech aquarium with all the most expensive bits and pieces on there, and you can keep some tremendous livestock, but take those equipments away and the tank will soon crash and burn. However, something like this, which is really simple and is more importantly stable, all the biological activity is done inside the water column and inside the livestock. So we have live rock. You might notice that there's no substrate in this tank as well. We have lots of live rock, we have lots of macroalgae, no corals because I've just not put any in, but you could easily put corals in here. And all I have to do to this tank is water change it once a month and obviously feed the livestock. Now that is my kind of reef keeping. The kind of reef keeping where you can sit back and you can enjoy your aquarium, as opposed to every day having a chore of adding this, that and the other, cleaning this, that and the other. This tank is kind of self-perpetuating. Of course, it is a closed environment, so I have to do the odd bit of maintenance here and there. Change a little bit of filter floss every couple of weeks, do a little bit of a water change, and clean the front panel of glass. But you'll note, I never clean the back panel of glass. Okay, there's no background and the wires are a bit horrible, but I've never cleaned that in the time this tank has been running. That is just how well balanced this tank is, that the only thing that's growing on the back is a little bit of hair algae, which I like the look of. It's a natural background, but in general it's perfectly balanced. Lighting wise, we've just got some T5s. So I've got a 10,000K bulb, and I've also got a Reef 5050, which is that one. Gives you a slight blue hue, but no actinic, because macroalgae is not a massive fan of actinic. It's a waste of time. And that is the secret, essentially, to this tank. Hands out, let the macroalgae do its thing, let the ecosystem within the tank flourish, and the less time you spend messing around inside your tank, the more time you can spend enjoying your livestock. And actually, this tank is quite heavily stocked for 120 litres. We've got a beautiful Royal Grammar. We've got our little 6-line wrasse in there. This is a new addition, a Springer Eye Damsel, just to keep flatworms down. And we've got a pair of stunning Bangais. And also in there somewhere we have a bicolour Blenny, but he only comes out every now and then. In terms of cleanup crew, I rely quite heavily on these guys, which are Dove Snails. These are my favourite of all snails. They are just amazing in terms of cleaning, and they're also self-perpetuating. When they're happy, they will breed. We also encourage natural cleaners like Bristle Worms. Bristle Worms are loathed, I would say, amongst a lot of reef keepers, but they do an important job. Now, if it wasn't for these guys, you would see a lot more rubbish accumulate in your aquarium. Yes, they can get out of control. However, they only get out of control if you get out of control with your feeding, because the main source of their overpopulation tends to be overfeeding of your fish. So if you don't feed your fish too much, then you don't get too many bristle worms. You get the right amount of bristle worms. And that's another thing that's great about this tank, is a lot of the food that the fish eat actually comes from the environment. So this environment will stimulate things like flatworms and copepods and amphipods and things like that. I do give them a bit of extra food. We can see here what I feed them. Just a little bit of brine shrimp, but they probably only get that once a week. The rest of the time, the environment that they're in will actually sustain them quite well. So I hope that's been interesting. It's just a subject I thought was quite cool, because, you know, it's always quite tempting to just try and make things as complicated as possible. But in here, I mean, this is probably a tank that if you went down to your local fish shop and said you've got a 120 litre tank with 2 Bangais, a Damsel, a Blenny, a wrasse and a Royal Grammar with pretty much no filtration on it, they would probably refuse to serve you and maybe even refuse to talk to you ever again. But look at it, it's stunning and massively healthy. So if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment below. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Once again, thanks for watching and happy fish keeping!